have to.
It's 9 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, Chris. Thank you. We're at the regular Commissioners, Pipestone County Commissioners meeting of October 8th, 2024. Present are Commissioners Luke Johnson, Doug Nagel, myself, Dallas Roskamp, Dan Wildermuth, Chris Hollingsworth, County Administrator Steve Ewing, and Carrie Menace, the HR Coordinator. First order of business, is there any additions, deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one under Commissioners warrants. You do have a new listing in front of you this morning. The Auditor Treasurer's Office deleted a invoice from Election Systems, ESS Elections, for $13.54.70. Was on page 5 at the bottom of your 10/4/24 listing. So they ESS requested that be pulled because they had an issue with the ballot and didn't want the county to pay it. So you have a different amount. So the Commissioner's warrant new amount is $164,149.96. And we do have add-on Commissioner's warrants this morning. You have a list of that for $944.80. Those are the only changes I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
With those adjustments, I'll move the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That carries. Now, the consent agenda, approve the minutes of 9/24/24, approve auditors warrants of 9/27/24 and 10/4/24. Approve commissioners warrants, the corrected one of 164,149.96 and another one of 944.80. Approve hospital warrants of $884,582.23. Approve treasurer's report of September 2024.
Here, I'd move for approval.
Thank you. Is there support? Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That carried. Mr. Nick Bergman, County Engineer.
Morning.
Morning, Nick.
All right, first up for me today will be some project updates. First update I have is second page. That is our Stone Arch Bridge. You're supposed to start forming up the slab on top of the bridge today, so it's really coming together. So hopefully that'll be paved soon, and then we'll be one step closer to being done finally, so. Last update I have is on the next page. Our second box culvert contract for 2024. Just as a reminder, that bid opening is at our next meeting, so. Next for me, I just wanted to give you all an update on the Edgewood overlay. Contacted a couple weeks ago by the school. They might need to dig out into the street for their addition. They're also concerned with all the traffic for demoing and building, what it might do to our street, because they had heard that we were gonna overlay that next year, and I said, well, it sounds to me like the easiest thing to do would be to just delay that part of the project for a year for us. The roads, I'm not worried about that. We can delay it. That's fine. And then last week I was contacted by one of the Public Works employees. They had some concern with the utilities under that northern part, so north of where they stopped. And I think they're doing a little bit more exploration, if I understood him right, if they need to replace all that or not. He really didn't want to cut into a new overlay there, which is smart on his part. So I said, "We'll tell you what, we can delay that part too. That's not a problem." I just had him try to figure out what they need to do to fix that, so. We may delay that northern part, but I just want to be clear, we can still do the southern part and get that back up to where it needs to be, so. So more to follow, but if you start hearing some rumors about delaying the project, we're talking about the north part, not the south part that needs to be filled back in, so.
They did some touch-up tarring yesterday, so the bump isn't as bad for the transition, so.
Okay, good.
That's, it's much nicer than it was
Okay.
last week, all week. So.
Good deal, but
So Nick, when do you think you'll be able to complete that project? Then we looking at another year?
It's a 5-year project.
yeah, so that road,
Probably won't be after 2 years, should be done, maybe 3.
yeah, I think it depends on when they can get funding. I'm not sure though. That's just kind of my guess based on a little bit I know on how that side of thing works for the cities, but we'll get the south part done. So that's not what we're talking about delaying. We're talking about delaying the north part, so. But we don't want to do it and then rip it up in a couple of years. That doesn't make any sense, so. So more to follow, but just in case you start hearing rumors, now you can set everybody straight, so. Next up for me, we have a federal overlay next year and, I think we need to have what is called a Title VI program. I'm not really sure what that is. I know some other counties have had to do it. I think we have to have that in order to get our federal funding. So just so you know, I'm gonna research that. I'll be back, or I may be back with more. We may have to approve some type of program that gets incorporated into our proposals, but just kind of wanted to put you on notice. So when I come back with wanting to approve a policy or something like that, you kind of knew it was coming, so. Next up, Highway 75 sign update. So the district traffic engineer, I think was his title, reached out to me. I did extend an invitation to him to come down here. He said, or actually I invited the guy that called me. He was the guy that puts the signs up, I think, but then his boss called me. So there's 2 options if you'd like to speak with them directly. Sounds like in order to get that big of a block of time for them to physically be here, we're probably talking January before they could get here. Otherwise, they could, if Zoom is if an option for them, they could, I think the first meeting in November, they could carve out enough time to Zoom in. So I guess it's up to you guys how you'd like to do that. I think I'd probably just do the Zoom, but get it going while it's still fresh in everybody's mind, but that's up to you, so.
Did he say anything that addressed our concerns about the lack of signs?
He pretty much said what I said. He told me the same thing the first guy told me. He maybe had a little bit more to say, but not a whole lot more than probably what I shared already. I mean, that's their reasoning behind it. It's a trial. If it doesn't work, if everybody hates it, they're willing to go back to, it sounded like they were willing to go back to putting them up, but,
Is it too soon to tell them we ate it?
but,
Yeah,
and we'll probably still hate it.
tell him he doesn't have to come as long as he agrees to put the signs back up.
Sure, okay.
If they're too busy to come to our meeting, that's fine. Just put the signs back up and
Yeah.
I'll be happy.
He's not saying he wouldn't come to the meeting. It's just, I think they're coming out of Hutchinson or something. So if you look at that big of a time block, before they had that much time open in a day, it was like January, but he said, we can zoom in like the first meeting in November, so.
I think I'd rather have him in person than in Zoom, because if he's gonna have, if our concerns are gonna fall on deaf ears, I would like those ears to be in this room.
Okay, I can do that.
I got a message from somebody, actually, I had someone stop me at the corner of 75 and Old 268 because they needed to find Edgerton in the cemetery. They did not have a phone. There were no signs.
And that might not be a bad idea as well too, is to have some of our citizens come to that meeting as well too. So he's hearing it not just from us, but also from the people that are directly affected as well. So if
Shall I make a list of all the people that have talked to me?
make a list, invite them and exactly.
I will ask them, let me know the first available date they can make it in person then, so.
If their decision is going to be made depending on the level of pushback, let's give them some pushback.
Okay, I will do that. Next up for me, Stone Arch Bridge. I'm not sure when it'll be open to traffic. It'll probably be fairly short notice, but would you like me to go ahead and set up a ribbon cutting for that? I don't know what it'll cost. I assume it's whatever it costs at the Kyle's building, so. Or maybe it costs nothing. I don't know, but there might be some cost with it, but.
If you would like, I can check with the chamber, because the chamber is the one that did it for
Oh, that's,
our building. But that's a little different because it was in town, although it is the Pipestone area chamber. So I'll check and see what their involvement could be.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be a good idea to do it just to draw attention to the project, don't you guys?
As long as there's two pieces of cake for you, right?
That's right.
He snuck back, no, he snuck back in line the second time.
oh, okay, that's. No, it might be November, so it might be a little colder out by then, but.
Well, we can have hot apple tea or apple cider. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'll check with the chamber and see if they would be able to participate in that, seeing as how
Okay.
it's not here, it's at the state park. But even if it isn't, we can still put something together ourselves. It's not that difficult, so.
Yeah, I'm sure we could get the stuff on Amazon if
Yeah.
you wanted to do that, but.
They'll lend us out their scissors, so.
Sure, there you go. Yeah, and I've, we've already kind of been making a list, like if we do go forward with this, like who to all invite. So we've been talking about that amongst ourselves.
Funders and.
Yep, I think Schumacher and Weber, I think we're on there, and contractor and City of Island State Park, stuff like that, so.
Perfect.
So I will plan on trying to set something up for that. Next item for me, you all have this handout. Bit of a treasure hunt down there, as you can see. They had to pump the water down a little bit more, to do some tuck pointing, some of the final stuff. And they found that bench. We pulled it out, brought it back, pressure washed it off, so we could see what it looks like. I contacted a few people that might have an idea. One person was pretty sure there used to be a bench up on that berm that blew out. Then the state park superintendent said it looks exactly like the ones they have at Blue Mound. So he's fairly confident that this came from there. So we can throw it in the iron pile. We can offer to give it back to them, or if you want, if we get slow this winter, we could, if the park would use it, we could sand it down, I guess, and repaint it with our guys and put some new boards on it, and maybe we could put it back up on the berm by that plaque that shows it sat in the water. If that's the one, it sat in the water for 30 years, sorry, but I don't really have any thoughts. I guess it's up to you guys, but that's something we should do, or I could
I think so.
offer it to them. Maybe they don't even want that. I don't
Yeah.
know. But if they're interested, that's something we could do in the winter time. I think we should.
Looks like a project.
Piece of history.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a neat backstory, so.
Mhm.
All right, I'll keep digging on that, see if I can pin an answer down for sure on that one way or another, but then next, that weight that we found in the mud, it's exactly 50 pounds. Talked to a number of bridge builders, nobody recognizes it. Any of you happen to recognize it? Okay.
There's nothing tied to the weight. No.
No, there's nothing tied to the weight.
No body.
Make it really good.
Yep. I dug out one of those photos there you can see of the construction. And if you look at how those little hoists or whatever you want to call them are set up, to me, they almost had to have some type of counterweight on them. So,
That makes sense.
and then if you look in the center of this weight, there's a hole in it, like it would be easily mounted on something as a counterweight, but I don't really like to know if that was used during the original construction. I think that'd be really neat. So the museum said, if we wanted to get rid of it, they would take it and put it in their possibly this source pile. So, but I'll keep looking. But if you come across anybody that might know, I'd be interested to know where it came from. So
It almost looks like that handle was wrought iron, doesn't it?
Mhm.
It's in my office. If any of you want to stop by and see it and try to help yourself.
You didn't want to bring it down today, huh?
Just an observation about that picture. What do you notice the glaring lack of in the background?
Yeah.
There is no trees.
Trees, I think there's a house up there now. I think that picture's looking to the northwest, but. Yep. Yep, a lot more trees now and,
Some without leaves on the left side there, but
yeah. Everybody looks tired.
no shade.
No shade, heavy stones. I don't blame them. So, okay, well, if you can think of anybody that might be able to identify any of those, either of those items for sure, let me know. I'd certainly pursue it, so. Next for me would be some, maintenance, updates. Last month, we've done some bituminous patchwork. Did a ditch clean on County Road 17. I've been doing some maintenance graveling and a bunch of FEMA paperwork, so. Then, lastly for me, Murray County is trying to sell their old shouldering machine. I think they have a reserve of $1,500 on it. It's my understanding they tried to sell it before and I didn't meet the reserve, so, for that little money, I think I'd like to try to purchase it. We have a nice one for smaller jobs. It's like kind of a one-man show there. This would take more of the full crew. But we could get bigger stuff done, like I feel like our County Road 9 and 18 need a bunch of work every year and it takes a long time with that little one, but so on years when we have available staff, that would help. That'd be nice there, but if you remember ours, we sold for scrap iron a couple years ago. This one's obviously a lot better than that, but thing that interests me is it runs, it works good. I've seen it in action and it's not a whole lot of money to get back into this, so.
Is this self-propelled or is it pulled?
Mounts
by-
in the front of a payloader.
Okay,
Yep, so we'd need a couple flaggers, payloader operator and a few trucks bringing material to it.
but if it saves labor,
Yes, in the bigger jobs, it is good for that. We have some narrow shoulders, some that don't need a lot of material, then we would just use our old one that looks like a sander on the back of a truck. So I mean, we wouldn't use this everywhere. There's still many places where the one we have is the one we would want to use, but for that little money, I think we should go for it, but.
you don't need our permission for that small dollar amount. It's just for information. Or do you want action on this?
I don't think I need anything if you're fine with it, but. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if we can get officially bidding in time. I kind of doubt it, but I can reach out to them and say, if it doesn't meet your reserve again, give me a call. We need to talk about it, so.
Why couldn't you put an actual official bid in on it?
Because it's online and I don't know if we can get set up in time. It closes sometime today, I believe, but I don't remember. Maybe it's closed by now. I don't know, but, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's not that big a deal. We can keep going as we have been. Okay,
Shoulders are important, especially this time of the year.
yeah,
A lot of things get driven on the shoulder that.
yep. And, also, I think it helps protect the edge of the pavement. If
That's
your
the
shoulders
problem.
down, it breaks them off and creates more problems. So, yeah, it's important to have good shoulders, so. Right. Any other questions for me? Otherwise, that's all I have.
Anybody else have anything for Nick? Thanks, Nick.
Yep, no problem. See you in a couple weeks for the bid opening.
When's the snow coming?
I don't know, looking at the forecast, I think it's gonna be a while yet, but good. Next January, we'll see, so. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Miles at 9:30. What personnel? You got something to fill the time?
8,
Well. Yeah, and look,
not gonna take long.
well, look who walked in the door right behind you. You don't have to feel very long.
So updates, all three of our offers, that you guys approved last meeting, those people all accepted. So we had Daniel Guardado started as jailer dispatcher yesterday. Amy Erks is starting a full-time position on next Monday, and then Brett Steuben, accepted the highway maintenance worker position, but he wants to finish harvesting. So he's gonna start on 10/28. And then the other HR update is this just testing open enrollment right now, and we're ready to launch that in like 10 days, so.
Anybody else have any questions for Carrie? Thank you. Kyle, are you ready?
Morning, Kyle.
Kyle. I don't know, Magellan might be joining by Zoom at 9:30. I don't know if they wanted to be present or not, so I'll do the septic grant agreement first. Have a grant agreement, $71,200 with Board of Water and Soil Resources for 21,200 for our annual program operations, and then another 50,000 for our low income grant program that we've got going. So just need a board action on signing the grant agreement. In any questions?
Jared moved to approve.
Thank you. Is there support?
I will second, but could you elaborate a little bit?
Yes, we need some.
Yep, on the grant, or which?
Yes.
Which one?
On just what the grant agreement is about.
Well, basically, the grant agreement is the 21,200 is for our administering the septic program countywide, issuing permits and verifying inspections, things like that. The 50,000, there was additional legislative dollars appropriated to Bowser or through the MPCA to Bowser for low income grants. So we set up a criteria based on USDA, or actually we've changed it now. It used to be USDA housing eligibility grants. We were using those dollars. Now we're using the poverty chart from the state of Minnesota, and we're doing 300% of the poverty level for eligibility based on the number of individuals in the home. And then we will cost share up to 70. Keep changing things. So up to 75%, not to exceed $10,000 for the septic update.
And then this is separate than our septic loan program, or does this augment the loan
Oh,
program?
this will complement the loan. So a lot of people will do the grant and then they'll do the loan in addition to that. So there's no out-of-pocket monies. So the grant only covers a percentage of it. And then the loan will obviously cover the remainder.
And I assume there's provisions in that agreement that if the property is sold before a certain period of time.
Yep, our agreement is 7 years. Yep, we want them to stay there. So we don't want people flipping homes,
Right.
getting the septic updated, things like that. So we haven't had any issues that I'm aware of.
And roughly off the top of your head, how many loans, septic loans have we got out? Is it a very heavily used program?
We're allocating pretty much all of the money that revolves annually. So we're probably doing about 8 systems a year. So it's right in that 50 to 100,000 is what we're loaning out per year.
And are the septic systems probably in excess of 15, maybe 17,000 now? What's it cost to put in a system?
Most are getting around 18 to 20. Yep.
Thank you.
Do the people in Trotsky qualify for any of this?
They don't.
That's all
Trotsky,
different, right?
right. If Trotsky would have chosen to do individual systems, which we didn't recommend, we would have did the loans or the grants. But being that they're doing a central system through other grant dollars, they wouldn't qualify for these individual dollars.
Yeah, it's gonna cost them a certain amount to hook up, but we aren't set up to help them do that.
Right, they've got other grant dollars that they're working through to
Okay.
get the system put in.
Cause they got the pond finished, I guess.
Okay.
So they're working
Getting
toward it.
close. Yeah, I haven't heard or talked to anybody from the Trotsky for
quite some time.
Yeah, they got to water test the pond now, so see if it leaks.
So do they have all the street work done in town?
No,
So it's just the pond is just now,
you gotta start at the back end and work
and work
backward.
going forward, right?
But-
Yeah, one of the biggest issues there is gonna be infiltration. You know, people putting their basement drains and other things into the system, and it overloads the system.
They don't have enough to keep the system going. They want people to.
Oh,
put
so they would
storm-
want extra water.
They're gonna need
Okay.
extra water, yeah.
Well, then that'll be a good thing, because
Well-
they'll get plenty.
That's. They're looking for $200,000, 200,000 gallons of water to test it, and you gotta find water somewhere. But
Yeah, because in Hatfield, we designed that in-ground system. It was designed for about 7,000 to 9,000 gallons per day. Until they got the infiltration fixed, they were getting upwards over 20,000 a day. And the mound turned into just a mush. It turned into a mushy thing. So luckily they got that all under control, and now they're running about under 5 per day. So
Luke, I've been told in Holland that infiltration is a huge problem. Is that
It is,
correct?
it is, yeah. And they're trying to, get money to upgrade it, but right now I think they only have enough to do the water tower for now, and
yeah, I think every city has infiltration issues that they're wanting to address. It's just not something simple to get done.
it's really expensive for how few people there are.
But no, the septic, the grants, we've been fortunate. We've been getting about 20 to 40,000 every year for that, for the grant side of it. And then, yeah, having that loan money is just even better, so. Works very well.
Good deal.
Call the question, Mr. Chair,
what are we voting on?
on the grant.
Okay,
Second the grant, yep.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Carried.
Kyle, will you sign this or do you need Dallas to sign?
Nope, I will e-sign it. Everything now is coming digital from the state, so.
Perfect.
As long as I got action on it, I will just e-sign it and take care of it that way. If that's okay. Seems to work the best. I mean, they're probably not gonna join.
For 927, we got.
They trying to get on here or not? He's making.
That's too good, isn't it?
This one, I don't see anybody waiting here.
Yeah, and I would have thought they would have joined by now, so we probably can go ahead and take action on the conditional use permit. So I received an application from Magellan Pipeline for a valve site. The planning commission had a hearing held on September 24th to invite the public comment on the valve site. We did have several individuals attend. There was really no opposition to the valve site, more opposition to the pipeline. But the valve is going to be proposed to be located in the southeast quarter of section 9 of Grange. And it was the recommendation of the planning commission to approve the valve site. You'll see in the findings, it's going to be about a 50 by 50 area that's fenced in. And basically just a couple pipes that come above the ground along with a control panel. And this will be where they'll be interconnecting on the northeastern corner of the reroute that the PUC recommended or basically. And it sounds like they'll be coming back. Once they acquire easements and other things, they'll be coming back likely for another 2 valve sites. Talking with Luke yesterday, it's not totally clear if the valves are part of the PUC permit or if it should be something that we issue locally. So it's kind of a gray area, but I'm anticipating having 2 more conditional use hearings on the other valves, so.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve.
And I will second.
Thank you.
I would have some questions for Magellan. I'm not familiar with them ever having valve sites fenced in before. Certainly they've got other valve sites, but I've never seen one of their above ground valves being fenced. Have you guys? So I wonder if this is a new engineering
They
specification.
said there would be security also. So there'll be cameras and other lighting.
That's quite different. So,
And it sounds like I think they probably increased the requirements on valves. It sounds like they're required every 15 miles now,
okay,
where I don't think they don't have that many in the current lane.
that way they can isolate sections quicker and
Right.
so forth. And obviously then they are purchasing their right of way then from the landowners.
We don't know that yet. I've talked to Nick. It's unknown how they're gonna reroute or where the pipe will be.
But for this valve, because this valve doesn't sit in the road right away.
No, this will be on private property. They obtained a perpetual easement to
Okay.
locate the valve on the privately owned land.
So we're not getting out in front of ourselves on this by authorizing this now before they have their
No,
PUC permit.
They did request two valves. They rescinded one of them because of the PUC's decision to not approve the shorter route. They opted the longer route, so they're gonna have to change their plans.
And does this fall in to our jurisdiction? Do we have authority over this?
Through the conditional use permit as an essential service, yes.
Okay,
I'm kind of wondering, isn't this all part of that project? Why is there a separate thing for the valves or?
And the same thing happened with wind. The PUC approved the larger wind projects. And then we held individual conditional use permits for the substations because they were a component of the state permit, but not really addressed. And when they're being located on private property affecting neighbors, at least it's a public procedure for them to get notice of and be able to comment.
It just seemed like.
I don't
that's kind of
expect us-
Part of the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't expect it to be denied or anything
Yeah.
like that, but if there was some issue or if they wanted some specific, screening or something, maybe they could be accommodating to do something like that.
But in my mind, where this is basically a safety mechanism, in the event there is an issue, they're able to shut things down. I mean, it's our duty to protect the public health and welfare, and obviously that would help do that.
Yeah.
anything we can do to help facilitate this, I'm
Right.
Kyle, you mentioned the reroute on this was the further one, right? That short reroute.
Right, their initial one, they were thinking was gonna be just by the cemeteries.
Right.
This one is going about a 15 mile, is that right, Steve?
Yeah.
North, isn't it?
To the west and
West,
north and
north.
northeast.
Thank you.
And as Nick reported, it will be in all of our county road right away.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah,
he
pretty
didn't
much.
found that
It's
out.
following the roads.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so Nick has some concerns
North, east.
with some of that too,
Yeah.
so. Yep, more to come.
Hey, is there a motion to approve this?
Yeah.
it's been moved and seconded.
Motion by Luke, second by Dan.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Right.
All opposed, same sign. Carried.
And you'll need Dallas to sign.
Yep. Thank you.
What's up next?
Mr. Chairman, the reason Jamie Fay is on at 10:30 is that's as soon as she could be here for the audit report. So we have a gap in between there, so we could do committee reports. And I apologize for a light agenda.
That's all right.
But we're gonna lose the press if we start committee reports. Who's ready to give their committee report?
I can start out.
Okay.
For the month of September. On the 4th of September, We had this RCCIP, this is this childcare program that we're working on. We had a meeting for that and also coordinated, we had an event recognizing the providers, daycare providers. The following day, then on the second, excuse me, on the fifth, Doug and I then went up to Alex then for the Prime West meeting. I guess nothing really specific stands out from that. We're still working on we're still waiting to hear back from the Supreme Court on our decision in regards to a single source or county-based purchasing. Other than that, the normal quality controls and so forth. On the 8th and on Sunday, we participated. In fact, Luke was there as well too, with a ribbon cutting for the Casey Jones Trail.
I was not there.
That was
Oh,
me.
Dallas was there. Dallas was there, excuse me. Yes,
Hate to be called Luke.
that's right. I love it. But you were on the east end and I was on the west end, and we had good turnout for that. It went well. Or some of the riders actually came from Sioux Falls for it as well too. They really enjoyed the trail. So then on the 10th, we had our Explore Southwest Minnesota meeting, still working on development tourism and so forth. I don't know, Chris, anything more to add to that? They're kind of routine. We can't give up on it.
No.
Yep. On the 11th then, Wednesday, prior to the AMC meeting, we had an AMC board meeting up at Alex. I went to that board meeting. I didn't stay for the full meeting, for the Thursday, Friday. In that, they handed out, in fact, I think Steve, you got a copy of that, a list of all the things that AMC has brought into Pipestone County for us for the year as well too. It was interesting looking through that list. So talked about some of the challenges going forward. On the 16th, then I had my SMOC meeting for Worthington. I Zoomed that particular one. I wasn't able to get there in person. And our new director again, Darcy Getke, is really working out well. She's got programs going where we've got an HR director now. We also have got a finance. We've got a finance person now as well too. So we're making good progress there. On the 19th, then, we had a special meeting then with Steve and myself, the city in regards to our sheriff's budget. We wanted a couple different items there. And Chris, you were that? Yep. You were there as well too. Yep. I thought it went pretty well. Making progress on that. They put the numbers into their budget for the year. On the 23rd, then over in Slayton, our Minnesota Rural Energy Board, we had a regular meeting. Also, we had a presentation from XL Energy about renewables and so forth and the progress on renewables. So just continue to advocate for those. Regular board meeting on Thursday, along with hospital board meeting. And then on Wednesday, the 25th, we had a transportation task force meeting. This was up in Marshall, and it was with UCAP, and it was a listening meeting. Senator Tina Smith had one of her representatives there looking for information. And I think we opened their eyes a little bit in the complexity of it. They had no idea, especially when you factor in the veterans transportation needs as well too, and how that's a complete different set of regulations for that. So that completes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You ready?
Yep. On the 9th, September 9th, I had a law liaison meeting, and then that segued into another meeting like Dan had already mentioned about. On the 10th, we had a personnel committee meeting, which we talked, or Karen mentioned, we fill all those positions that we had talked about. On the 12th, I had a SRDC that was actually held here in Pipestone at the Hiawatha Lodge. The one big takeaway that I took from that is they're partnering with 2 other regional development commissions and I believe the number was $55 million that they got from the state to reinvigorate the meat cutting programs around here. So if anyone's going to school for it, there's going to be grants for you to go to school, or if it's like a high schooler that wants to work after school, like for a meat locker, they will pay that student to go there, not the locker or anything. and stuff like that, just trying to get people back into this program.
I also was told that they are bringing back the HVAC program there as well too. So they have carpentry, plumbing and HVAC as well.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. Um, had met with CPT twice on the 10th for their personnel committee and then the full board on the 24th. Full board, we got to be a very long meeting. Basically just a lot of nitpicking over COLA and things like that, cost of living adjustments and whatnot. So there's a lot of different opinions. CPT, even though they're owned by the public, really isn't a public entity at the end of the day. So a lot of people arguing about how it affects their levies. CPT does not affect anybody's levy. So it's got to be a long day. And then I attended both the full board and hospital board meetings on the 23rd. Or on the 24th, excuse me. That's my report for September.
Thank you. Doug, you ready?
Okay, for September here, Prime West Health, Dan mentioned just kind of normal business went on there, I guess, but the 10th regular board meeting on the 11th, Buffalo Ridge Drug Task Force at Slayton. They are using some of their money for a new vehicle for Lincoln County, excuse me. 25,000 towards a vehicle for Lincoln County. And if you remember in 23, Murray and Pipestone County received that same funding. On the 12th, Soil and Water Conservation District, kind of normal business there. On the 16th, Private Industry Council, and they actually did talk about the meat cutting there too. It came up like Pipestone should get their class going again. Not that nothing in the works, but there's talk about it, so. Then they gave us say think of the word. The unemployment rates, Pipestone is pretty much one of the lower ones in the state, but this is interesting that Cottonwood is the highest at 7.3 and Pipestone is 3.1. They kind of question why that was, and
If I could
it
interject,
came up,
possibly. Go ahead.
no, it came up that that meat cutting,
Exactly.
but she kind of said that wasn't the reason, so.
Really?
Yeah,
Because they laid
I don't
off a
think
lot
we
of
ended up
people.
with an answer on it
Yeah.
really, so, but that's, that's what they were. Anyway, so it's good. We're one of the lower ones. Southwest Health and Human Services, pretty much normal business, but I was just gonna mention, they did hire I think it's their only job is the cannabis regulations. They hired a person for that and, she's gonna be working with all 6 counties on, getting their regulations in order and, whenever we need her, she's available with questions or to come and help us, so.
She's the
That's
person
good.
that previously was the Pipestone Area Coalition Director here at the school. And then when this
Okay.
position came available,
Yeah.
she moved into that. So there is an opening there yet now for a coalition leader.
Jenna Stevenson.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, so anyway,
Very,
she'll
very
be,
nice
we'll
person.
probably be seeing some of her. So. 25th, the radio board at Marshall, that was basically normal business as usual. 24th, regular board meeting and the hospital regular board meeting. That's my head.
Thank you.
Nope. Excuse me, on the 11th, I attended the AMC board meeting where we heard from Premier Business Partners and discussed AMC dues. And the MRC board met after that. We heard from Representative Jim Joy from the Moorhead area and Senator Tory Westrom, who represents from Big Stone to Stearns County. And we approved the Capitol Hill contract for the next 2 years. They've done a great job for us. And we approve suspending 2024 dues for new members if they wish to join for 2025. So they'd be able to help, like come to set priorities and whatnot, which they could have yesterday or at our December meeting. We didn't have anyone show up yesterday, but they do have meetings scheduled with several counties that are considering joining. So looks like we might get some new members come beginning of the year. And then on the 12th, AMC Research Committee met, that we heard from NACO research team on their work. And then later found out that Jill Surmeyer is going to become the Stearns County Assistant Administrator. So she's going to leave AMC. It's a bummer, but she'll do real well because she's very qualified and and
AMC though.
yeah, it's a bummer for AMC because yeah, she's a big asset. But then during the AMC full policy conference, we had discussions on the elections, the due situation, federal grant discussion where Jason Walker from our local SRDC was one of the presenters and did a nice job. Had a cannabis discussion, and of course, we must have our ordinance in place by January 1st to avoid problems, So hopefully we're moving forward on that. That the Environment and Natural Resource Committee, we had updates from Bowser DNR and a number of the affiliate organizations, planning and zoning administrators, solid waste administrators, county feedlot officers, and ag inspectors. And on the 13th, the Environment and Natural Resource Committee met to set their priorities. And we basically came up with a solid waste management proposal as our number one priority, kind of including the entire spectrum of, demo landfills, waste energy, all the different components that we need, hoping that it'll be a number one priority for AMC. So we'll see what happens at the district meetings, of course. Our second priority was flood mitigation and storage. On the 18th, Highway 23 Coalition met just on Zoom. On the 23rd, I met with Jay Trustee and SWA president from Lincoln County regarding the 10-year plan update. And of course, we still have ongoing concerns about the demo landfill issues. On the 24th, we had the hospital board meeting. On the 26th, had an executive meeting for Area 2 and RCRCA to discuss a wage adjustment for the employees that hadn't been done in 10 years or more. And we did a little, informal wage study of our own based on just counties in our area. And basically the techs working for these groups were very underpaid, and yet they've been there for 20 or 30 years. So, we ended up approving, an increase for them, and probably will have to do it again next year to get them caught up, but these, we're pleased with what we recommended, I guess. Excuse me. On the 27th, MRC was asked to join a Bowser meeting, which I participated in with, where we talked about local road wetland replacement credits issues. Dave Wyron's kind of discussed of course, history of underfunding from the legislature to cover their own mandate. And, if you have to, buy credits, it takes a long time to establish credits. So if they get money to establish, it can take, a number of years before they're in place. And so you can't use them right away. And of course, if they get cash and can just buy them, but they're like $40,000 to $70,000 per credit. And I suggested to them that, you should partner with DNR and force them to build these wetland restorations on DNR property, which by the way is taxpayer property. I mean, it's not owned by the agency, it's owned by taxpayers. And of course, he kind of gave some answer like, oh, they don't really like to do that. And I'm like, I don't think this should be an option for them. I mean, it's not their property, it's our property. And if we can save a lot of money by doing this, it should be mandatory. But we'll see. We're going to be meeting again in the future, and that's going to be one of my primary suggestions to them. And we'll see what happens. On the 30th, they have the annual landfill meeting. They're proposing a $4 increase in the tip fee this year. and possibly a similar increase in each of the next couple of years. Of course, this relates to having to line for demo, free, which it looks like, it's pretty likely it's gonna happen at some point, and so they're just trying to accommodate for, if we have to build cells more often, the price is gonna go up. On second, MRC sat in on a DNR webinar about public water inventory updates. Of course, the legislature did pass legislation that gives the DNR money for the next 8 years to update the public waters inventory. This is supposed to be, something that fairly steady, so people have some certainty about where they stand. And now they're taking the position of, well, whether or not a certain branch of water has been on the public inventory currently or not, if it meets any of these 11 criteria that are in statute and have been for a long time, then maybe they will be added. And if it doesn't meet that, one of those 11 criteria may be taken off. But since some of those 11 criteria are things like, well, it has a definite bank and bed and it has running water. Well, so does every judicial ditch that I've seen. So, I mean, there's a lot of concern that, will all these ditches suddenly become public waters, which of course then have increased buffer requirements and, more permitting requirements. And, I asked specifically about that. They didn't give a very good, I mean, they made it sound like, well, drainage law pretty much covers that, but, we'll just see how it goes. But yet they referenced that Renville case where it was a judicial ditch. And then, of course, the Supreme Court said, no, I guess it's public water now. So I guess more to come on that. On the third, Area 2 and RCRCA met, just ongoing projects, pretty standard procedure there. And then yesterday we had our annual meeting for Minnesota Rural Counties. I passed the torch to Neil Peterson from Pennington, who's going to be the new chair. Steve Schmidt's going to be the new vice chair, and we set our platform that we worked on this summer. We voted on priorities, and here again, solid waste, a similar platform item to what AMC did at the environmental committee, was our number one priority by a large margin. And we're hoping to push that at the district meetings to have it be AMC's top priority as well. Our other priorities were, number 2 was transportation infrastructure, including local roads, bridges, and wetland credits. And then number 3 was something about there's apparently language that's going to sunset regarding mentally ill and dangerous people, where it must include some state funding. And they don't want that language to sunset because there have been counties that have gotten bills for between $300,000 and $700,000 per year for one individual in that situation. And, that's obviously pretty significant, especially for a smaller county. In fact, one county said they were making payments on theirs over a number of years because it was so much they couldn't afford to pay it all at once. So I guess that's how priority shook out for us there. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. My September was mostly ceremonial and not meetings. 8th was Casey Jones, cut the ribbon at the trailhead. The 10th was regular meeting. 19th, went to the Murray County Open House. Looked it over and talked about it last meeting a little bit. And the 22nd was Plum Creek 50th anniversary open house in Worthington. They had lots of people there, lots of things to do, and they're looking forward to the next 50 years. So 23rd was Rural Minnesota Energy Board. Saturday on that. 24th was regular meeting and hospital meeting. And the 28th was MHA Zoom Fast Track. So the couple of things that came out of Luke's report, cannabis, has anybody in this county applied for infused stuff in the bar. I know Hardwick approved it. There's another one in,
Yeah, somebody told me that Hatfield was interested in it, but I don't know if they've applied or.
Not sure if they've applied or not.
who would they apply to?
The state. That'd have to come from the state
Mhm.
if they applied.
Yeah.
The state gets it first. The applications, and the state will tell us what applications.
We have to do to regulate it.
It's already happening around the area. The Marshall Liquor Store, Tallgrass has got cannabis infused beverages in theirs in differing milligrams potencies as well. They're
And that's-
selling those.
And that's not supposed to have any THC in it, right?
It does, yeah.
It's a small
What
amount.
I've seen, 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams per, the canister. It's like a slim can of like probably 12 ounces. I was talking to the guy that was giving samples, didn't try and was that, he said that it's going pretty well. It's expensive. It's about $6 a can. You buy a 4-pack, so, but that they're selling it. He's recommended that if you have never tried it before, you should try a 5 milligram one, and because it could be a little potent on you if you tried a 10 milligram one. So it depends on what your body's used to, I guess. So,
Is that
but
on
it's
sale?
already out there.
Is that on sale and off
It's-
sale, or is that?
This is for off sale at the liquor store. I don't know if any bars around that are
There's a
doing it here
store
yet.
actually in Alex. Store, just a store for that.
Yeah,
Now, is there alcohol in the beverage as well too, or
No.
just THC?
No.
Because I'm seeing the two wouldn't seem
either
like
the
they
two
would-
may mix.
No,
No,
I wouldn't
it's
think
one
so.
or the other. You can't bring them both together. What you do with it at your
Right.
home is your own business.
Yeah.
Amen.
Sell it that way.
Boy, that's not cheap.
No, it's not.
Right. But yeah, the main thing that AMC was trying to bring up is that you must have your ordinance in place by January 1st. Or if you don't, say if somebody, has met the state requirements, they can just come in and locate wherever, do what they want, because you don't have no rules. So they strongly encourage you to have some rules in place.
That's the same thing they were telling us at Health
Mhm.
and Human Services. It's exactly the same.
I had contact with Ann Oren over at Health and Human Services a week or so ago, and we talked a little bit at length, and they will be providing us with all types and different types of outlines and templates and things like that to help us get through this. And she mentioned Jenna was starting working with her too, so Ann and Jen will be doing most of that.
It's just
sounds
where you
like.
gotta go through a public hearing process to do that. The
Yeah, it's
time's
not a whole-
slipping
it's-
by faster than we think,
Right,
you
yeah,
know.
not a whole lot different than anything else for a public hearing
Right.
to do it. I've got copies of the Nobles County ordinance that they've already done. Theirs is a very good one. We can certainly utilize that to take some information out of that and make it work for us. I have not heard anything of any of the cities being interested in their own ordinance, other than the city of Pipestone. They're interested in possibly doing their own ordinance. So, and that's fine. That's their purview. So that's great. We will have to reach out to the townships because there is something in statute regarding, we still have to get them to sign off on it, whether they want to or not to have us do the zoning, which is really what we're talking about, is the zoning for them. If someone wanted to cite, say, a grow house in the township or something like that, or whatever they wanted to do, or even a retail establishment, would have to go through county zoning like everything else does.
So you need the townships and the cities to sign on.
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
And the cities I've talked to, they have no interest in it. Talked to Edgerton, they have no interest in having their own, so they'll be happy to work with us on it.
I mean, just the amount of paperwork and, regulation you have to sift through. I mean, I can see why they would not want to.
Right. And we had no social equity license requests for
Applicants.
Pipestone County, or applicants for
Okay.
Pipestone.
Oh, you know that already?
I was reading about it, that most of the applicants were from out of state. Seriously.
Yeah, imagine that.
So the state has said that there's none for Pipestone County?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And that's,
For the-
we would have been
for
notified
that
already if
part.
there was, and there was nothing for us, so.
Okay.
And I'm guessing that those that did apply were primarily looking at large metro areas where there'd be large population bases.
I presume, I don't know exactly how it laid out where they were, but yeah.
It would just make sense.
Mhm.
Gotta go where the numbers are.
Right.
they're talking where Rock County was gonna probably have a large, application. Just because of where they're located with South Dakota and Iowa.
Closest to the Sioux Falls market.
Yep. He said, yeah, someone's apparently willing to pay a lot for one, but obviously the commissioners can't just do that.
More to come.
More to come. Okay.
Excuse me.
Anything else you want to talk about before we wait for Ide Bailey? Clear recess till 10:30. We're back in session. Ide Bailey, are you ready? Yes, please introduce yourself and
All right, good morning. I am Jamie Fay. I'm the audit partner Bailey who worked on the 2023 audit. So we're going to talk about numbers this morning. Everybody's favorite thing. So I'll try to keep it light and let me know. But what we're going to talk about today is you should all have copies of the financial statements in front of you. This is the year ended December 31st, 2023. So keep that in mind as we're kind of talking, because I would imagine you're probably living in some future budget years, some current activity years, and now some prior year information. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to flip through the documents a little bit, and I'll give you page numbers as we kind of go through. Just going to highlight a few of the things that tend to be important to boards that I talk to. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. So if you go to the big packet, the financial statements, and go to page 2. So this is really what you pay Ide Bailey really to give you as a final product. When you hire us to give an opinion on if the financial statements are materially accurate or not. You get an opinion on that from us. This year, the opinion was clean or unmodified, which is what you want, what you've gotten in the past. What that means is we came in and we tested a sample of transactions. We recalculated some things. We did not recalculate anything to the penny because we have a materiality threshold there. I just like to point that out because sometimes people hear audit and they think that we've looked at absolutely everything, and that's simply not the case. But through our procedures, we were able to get comfort with the numbers that are in the financials and the backup and things that we have to give that clean, unmodified opinion, which is great. Yes.
Jamie, while you're there as well too, sometimes we hear the term forensic audit. Could you explain the differences?
Absolutely. So what we do is we do not do a forensic audit. We have a department that can do a forensic audit. That really is looking for specifically, we have a concern about fraud in XYZ case. In the audit, if we find fraud, we absolutely have to report it and we will tell you about it. But that is not our primary focus of this audit. If you were to say, hey, we've got some concerns about a forensic kind of encounter in credit cards, we could engage and then do certain procedures over, hey, let's look at some credit card transactions, things like that.
Kind of a deep dive.
A deep dive,
Before you
yep.
get down.
Yes, yep. So those would be very specific. They would say this one was $14 instead of $12. And those engagements can be structured in a way where we come in and say, let's look at, we don't know what the concern is. Let's look at a lot of things, or we have a very specific concern. Let's look at a specific thing. So those can be structured a variety of different ways. When it comes to the financial statement audit, we have a very strict, you have to look at this, you have to look at this. It's like a checklist of look at internal controls. And so there's not a lot of flexibility in the procedures that we can do. But in terms of forensic audit, there would be a flexibility in a lot of different things. So good question.
Thank you.
So really, that's what you hired us to do. Some years you will hear the term single audit or federal audit. This year, the county did not expend more than $750,000 of federal money, so you did not need that separate single audit. So there's no opinion there. We didn't do procedures over that. What we did is we looked at what the county got for federal dollars to make sure you didn't need that. And when we looked at it, you were not above that threshold, so you didn't need it, which just cuts down on the number of procedures that we had to do in terms of the audit.
Jamie,
Yep.
does that include our ARPA dollars too?
That includes the ARPA dollars, yep. All right, so the next one I want to point out, If you flip to page 6, so this one is a lot of numbers. I'm just going to look at it very briefly just to point out there is a lot of balances in here, such as capital assets. There's some what's called OPEB liability, which is other post-employment benefits. There's some net pension liability. You probably don't hear those terms when you're talking about budgeting. They are on the financial statements. They are GASB specific, which is the standards that you follow. There is a lot of information in the footnotes about them. I only point them out to say they're on there. If you want to do a deep dive into the standards, I would be happy to. But typically when we talk to boards, we don't talk in detail about those just because they're actuarial reports. They don't make it really much of an impact on when you're budgeting in your day-to-day. They don't make a lot of impact in day-to-day operations. So what we look at is if you go to page 8, this is going to be the balance sheet for the governmental funds. This is in a way of accounting, a method of accounting where it is the short-term assets and liabilities that are on there, but not the long-term assets and liabilities. So things like capital assets that get depreciated, things like long-term debt, things like net pension liability, those do not show up on here. This is more of a, what do we have in our accounts receivable and accounts payable and kind of those shorter term things so we can really see how we're doing in kind of the day-to-day. So you can see the funds are broken out. You have the general fund of the county, fund of the county, and then there's a few other non-major funds that are lumped kind of into one. And so this is kind of the detail of the cash, the receivables, the accounts payable, things like that. So all of that, if you flip to page 10, this is like the operational statement of the county for the funds. So the general fund is obviously the kind of main fund of the county. So you can see the revenues were about 11.8 million for the county. Expenditures were about 10.6. So that resulted in a net change in fund balance of about $1.2 million increase. So at the beginning of the year, you had about $6.5 million in your fund balance. At the end of the year, you had about $7.7 million in your fund balance. So that increased a little bit for the general fund. There's a variety of reasons why there's ebbs and flows. Some years you'll see that number go up. Some years you'll see it go down. There's a variety of different ways that counties use their fund balance. Sometimes they build it up and then they spend it down for a big project. Sometimes they know that they're in the middle of deficit spending, kind of all of that. That fund balance number looks big, but if you think of it in terms of, hey, you have 7.7 million in fund balance at the end of the year total, you had 10.5 million of expenditures for the year. So you had more expenditures than you have in the fund balance. So if you think about, how much should we keep in there, that's really up to the county's decision and the board's decision on, hey, what do we want to have for kind of that safeguard? Because if something like a pandemic hits and you need cash and you need fund balance, you want to make sure you've got your reserves in there. So that would be the number that you would be looking at. And usually it's looked at in terms of what is the percentage that we have set aside at the end of the year in terms of what we spend every year, which is very similar to how people look at their personal finances. If you talk to a personal finance representative, they'll say you should have X number of months of cash in the bank just as a safeguard. So that's kind of how I like to think about that number because it looks big, but when you start talking about the dollars that the county has going through every year, it doesn't look as big if you look at it in that frame. So then the next fund, roads and bridges, that one had about $8.8 million come in for revenues, had about 10.3 million go out for expenditures. So that one did have a decrease of about 1.5 million. Fund balance there with about 4.1 million. Again, things go up, things go down, it happens. When we do our procedures, we looked at, hey, what did this look like compared to last year? How did those expenditures go? There was nothing we couldn't get answers to, which would be the red flags that we would be looking for. Yes.
And part of that is just the seasonal part of the type of work that they do as far as when the contracts are let, when the jobs are finished. So
yeah, and absolutely. And lately we've been seeing a lot of, we budgeted for something this year and we couldn't get the material or we couldn't get the contractors in place or whatever that looks like. So sometimes it's, hey, we planned for it in the previous year. It's going to happen now. It's going to look a little bit weird, but that's just how the economy let it happen. So it's pretty common right now. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So then if you flip kind of through, you will see that the medical center is in the financial statements. We're not going to dive into that. They get their own audit. We just put it in the county's audit because it is a required part of your report. But they get their own audit and their own, they deep dive into that. I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not even going to try. So then there's a number of pages if you want to deep dive into, hey, what's in the receivables or what is that pension liability? It's all in there in the footnotes. What I'm going to turn us to is on page 66, the budget to actual schedules. So when we talk to a number of boards and commissions, we talk about the budget to actual because you spend a lot of time deciding what you want the budget to be, balancing the budget, deciding if you need an unbalanced budget, whatever that looks like. So that's an important piece that a lot of people want to talk about. So the total budget for revenues were about 10.1 million, and this is for the general fund again. And then that 11.8 million was the actual. So you brought in about 1.7 million more than you had budgeted, which is pretty common for governments in Minnesota. It's conservative budgeting. There are a lot of revenues that you get that you don't necessarily know. The state of Minnesota might say, hey, here's some extra revenue for XYZ project. So that's pretty common to have some conservative budgeting there. And then for expenditures, budgeted about 10.1 million, expended about 10.6 million. Again, that has to do with, timing or projects that had to come up and you have to fix certain things and maybe they're not budgeted for, and that's okay. There is an original and final column for the budgeted amounts in here. The county does, or did at least, have the same budget for original and final, so there was no modifications, but that is an option. If you get through the year and you say, gosh, this is looking way different than we thought it was going to, you can always revisit that budget throughout the year if you want to. So that kind of comes down to that 7.7 million that we're looking at. And then the next page, page 67, this is the same type of analysis for the road and bridge fund. So road and bridge fund, you budgeted about 9 million, got in about 8.8 million, so a little bit less. Road and bridge is a little harder to budget for. There's just a lot more unknowns when it comes to that one. So budgeted a little bit more than it actually took in for revenues. And then for expenditures, you budgeted about 9 million, expended about 10.3. So kind of the same. Really, when we do those procedures, we go to the finance team and we say, hey, why is this a little bit different than budget? We get some good explanations, and there was nothing in there that we weren't able to work through, which is great. The next page that I'm going to throw us to is, if you go to page 82, very much time on these, but when I talked about those other funds front, this is where you would find the detail of those other funds. So the county has family services, they have the opioid settlement, they have a ditch fund, and then the medical facility bonds debt service fund. So this is just a breakout of each of those separate funds. If people are not aware of how government accounting works, I basically tell them it's kind of like a bunch of small little entities all kind of in one. So the Family Services Fund operates as a part of the county, but for reporting purposes, it is its own column and it gets broken out on its own. So we're not going to go into detail on there, but I just wanted to point it out if you were looking for what those look like. And then behind that is the budget to actuals for those funds. So then the next page I'm going to point us to is page 88. So one of the other things we do in our audit in the state of Minnesota, and in most states there is an equivalent of this, but the Office of the State Auditor has said there are certain things we need you to look at and make sure that our governments in our state are in accordance with this. They call it Minnesota legal compliance. So that's things like, are they in compliance with the pledge collateral rules? Are they in compliance with the open meeting law? Are they in compliance with these different statutes in regards to bid testing and making sure they're advertising for bids? So we do a number of procedures around Minnesota legal compliance, and this year there was no findings that came out of that. There was nothing that brought any kind of red flags to us where we had to report any kind of findings. So that's great. Again, we didn't test 100% of all of the transactions, but when we did test, there was nothing that came up, which leads to the findings piece. So every time we do an audit, people are like, okay, what are the things? What do we need to know? So these are the things to know. So at the end of the audit, we report findings. These would be things that come up throughout the audit that we have to report. So there are 3: segregation of duties, preparation of financial statements, and material journal entries. So those 3 are all 3 material weaknesses. And what that means is they rise to the level that there could potentially result in a material deficiency in the financials. So things like segregation of duties, preparation of financial statements, and material journal entries are very common when you come to governments in outstate Minnesota, because you simply do not have a number of CPAs on staff to be able to make sure that this person doesn't take the checks in and then also bring them to the bank and also do this. Segregation of duties is pretty tricky in small governments. Preparation of financial statements, there's a lot of stuff in here that CPAs sometimes struggle to understand. So it would be a pretty big feat if the county could write their own financial statements in full. So that's really what these three mean. We call them kind of the main three findings. I see them a lot. So they really don't raise any necessarily red flags for me. If there were other things in here, those would be the ones that we would talk about a little bit more. If there was legal compliance findings, sometimes in here we see if payroll is miscalculated or pension allocations are done incorrectly. We don't have any of that to report. So that's great news. So when you see those findings, that's what's in there. But I just wanted to give a little detail on what those are. And then the last thing that I will point out, if we go to the letter, go to page 3 of that smaller, I think they're stapled separately. Should say uncorrected and corrected misstatements. So I wanted to point this out because sometimes I get questions because the language is very technical. We don't have a lot of flexibility in these documents to give much color in here. But what these are is throughout the audit, if we propose journal entries to get the financial statements to be materially accurate, say that. So in here, we're saying, hey, we proposed some journal entries. It got the balances where they needed to be. There is a listing of those journal entries at the back of this letter or in one of the deliverables. So that's just saying, hey, we worked with the county. We got those entries, all of the balance. That's how we got the balances to be materially accurate. And then there are 2 in here called past adjustments. So what past adjustments are is they are dollars that we know that they're not the same as what the standards would say that they need to be reported as, but they are below a dollar amount where they would be considered material. So, yep, we know this is different, but the county has for one reason or another elected not to adjust for this, and so we're going to pass on it. The 2 in here specifically, there was a new standard that was put in place that is GASB 96, which I'm sure nobody has heard of, but it's essentially a lease standard for software subscriptions, and it's really technical, and honestly, it's a little bit of a hassle if you don't need to work through it. So what we did is we came to the county and said, hey, we know these aren't recorded on the books. Do you want to record them or should we just pass on them? And it's easier just to pass on them than have to amortize and depreciate them. And honestly, they don't make any difference in like the budgets that we were talking about because these would be on those first statements. So we're just going to pass on putting those on the books and it's immaterial. So we don't have to worry about it, but we just need to put it in the letter to let you know that that's different. Any questions on that? I know it's really technical.
Maybe just one comment going back to your findings, segregation of duties, yes.
Yes.
But at the same time, we still, even though we are not necessarily shorthanded, but we're a smaller organization is why we have that overlap, but there still are safeguards in place to make
Yes.
sure that, so I
Yeah,
want to
absolutely.
get
Yes.
that there's a concern.
Yes,
There are
that's-
safeguards there.
Yes, that's a good point. So when we do our procedures, we have to make sure there's internal controls in everything. And if there's not, then we have to say, okay, there isn't in everything.
Right.
A lot of times that comes from, journal entries maybe not being approved by someone who understands the accounting, which in a lot of cases, there's only one person who understands those journal entries. So an approval there doesn't make any difference. We definitely saw approval by the commission to approve expenditures and we saw sign-offs on those expenditures.
Very
So there,
transparent.
yes, there is a lot of sign-offs. There's a lot of approvals that happen in the county. Yes, that's a very good point. Well made.
Concerning the material weaknesses, I seem to remember it's a recurring theme.
Yes, yep. I think every year we've reported with the county, they've been the same. And I wouldn't expect that they would go away. In a lot of cases, when I have clients that are similar size to Pipestone County, look at like, what is the cost benefit to getting rid of these findings? It's would be such a high cost that it's not usually worth putting the investment in there. And they really don't, the state of Minnesota is not going to come say, hey, you had somebody prepare your financials, we're going to take away your funding. I've never seen that happen. So if there were other things in there that were concerning, we would definitely be talking about, hey, there's maybe some steps to do this. But these 3, I wouldn't worry about those. Good questions.
What page had the comparison of the general income and the road and bridge deficit is,
Not the budgets, right? That one would,
well, it looked like we made $1.2 million over levied on the general and
Yep.
lost 1.1 on the
yep, so that would be page 10.
page 10.
Yep, so that would be the general fund and then road and bridges.
But I
Was
don't
a,
want it, reported that, well, we over leveraged with $1.2 million. They got $1.2 million more than they needed.
yeah, and a lot of times, what happens is those dollars are brought in and they are, like I said, blocked off for kind of a future purpose. If you look at page 8, we didn't get into fund balances too much specifically, but I'll point it out real quick. So if you go to page 8 at the bottom where it says fund balances, there are a number of categories in there. So it's not just kind of all this money sitting there. So the first balance is non-spendable. That's required by the standards to be equal to a couple things like inventory, prepaids, those types of things. Then you have restricted. So that's money that you've received from somewhere else that is required to be used for a specific purpose. A good example of this is a lot of the state money that comes to the county. They say, hey, here's some money for this. You have to use it for that. If you haven't used it all, then that's where this restricted number comes from. So you had about 786,000 that was sitting there that will be used for these specific purposes. And then assigned fund balance is about 1.7 million, which I'll point out the detail to that in a second. And then unassigned, that's kind of the remainder. So the actual unassigned is only about 5.1 million, 5.2 million. And then if you look at page, let's pull up the assigned fund balance. If you look at page 39, this is going to be more detail on what those balances are. So for the restricted, you can see there's stuff for the law library, enhanced 911, some ARPA funding, some jail canteen fund money, some permit to carry money. Then if you go to that assigned for, that's money that the county has said we have either future commitments or we have a plan for this. We want to make sure there's some money kind of earmarked for these different things. Those assigned numbers, there is some flexibility of the county to use those and say, hey, we were going to do this project, but actually we're going to do that project instead. There is some flexibility with assigned. There is not that flexibility with restricted. When you get that money as a restricted fund balance, you do not have the option to move it to something else unless there is a special, the state of Minnesota says, hey, we went through a special session. You can use this money for something else. Usually happen. So you can see like there's about 110,000 set aside for computer software. There's $174,000 set aside for ambulance, those types of things. So that's a little bit of the detail of what the county has thoughtfully said, hey, these are kind of what we're thinking for this stuff, these dollars.
Okay. Any other questions for Jamie?
If anything else comes up, the finance department knows how to reach me. If you want to read this whole book and you have a lot of questions, let me know. Otherwise, I just wanted to say, we know the audit comes in and we kind of shake things up and we kind of disrupt everybody's life. So appreciate the county hanging in there with us and getting the audit done and signed, sealed, and delivered.
I would like to express our appreciation to you, Jamie, and also to I Bailey for this great work that you did, and also recognize the work that Amanda has done with her staff as well too. We really look for this unqualified opinion so that we don't have to digest every single word of this.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
very nice to know that we're in good hands. Thank you for the work you've done, and you as well, Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are
Need
you
action on this?
going to
Chair?
still continue this business?
So we are not going to do Minnesota counties as of right now. We're stepping away from Minnesota counties altogether. So we will not be doing the county's audit next year, which we have for the last, I think, 5 years.
Care to share a reason for that or
7
not?
years. It just, the way it works into the schedule, we have a number of December 31st year ends that are due June 30. And then we kick off with our June 30 year ends that are due November 5th or November 30th. And we've got people kind of getting pulled in different directions. And so we kind of had to take a look at the schedule and say, we gotta make sure that we are allocating enough time, because the really tricky thing that GASB does is they add statements and they never take them away. So what used to take us 100 hours now takes us 200 hours. So it just gets to be something that we just need to balance in the schedule. So that's the decision we had to make. And we only do a few Minnesota counties. So that was where the decision came from.
Well, thank you for your dedication in the last 5 years. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
we're gonna be so sorry you leave is what I'm trying to say. Anything else? It says action on my sheet, so
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we accept the unqualified opinion for our 2023 audit.
is there support for that?
There is.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That carried.
Amanda, have you got some leads on who can continue to do our audits for us going forward?
So we sent out requests for some bids and we haven't gotten any in yet. I've had some conversations with some that obviously have follow-up questions to find out about the county and what our specifics are. So, and we have a tentative date as to when Steve and I bring those bids.
Will this affect our medical center audit as well too, or is IB will continue in that capacity?
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
We have one thing we have to do yet. Oh, and I think Carrie is in charge.
What'd you do now?
You handed it to him and
Yo, you did it already? You did it already?
Birthday, Steve.
Happy birthday.
Yep, happy birthday.
It's his birthday sometime this week, so
It's on the 5th.
it was on the fifth. Okay.
You want to take action today?
Well, happy belated.
Thank you for the card.
You're going on.
And terrible birthdays.
So we refuse to pass this action. That means you don't get another year older.
Yeah. That would be great.
We have a motion to adjourn. I didn't hear a support.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Carried.
Chris, do you make the motion to adjourn?
Oh.
I did. No kid.
One second.
Good, second.
Yep.
And we'll call it 10:55.
Round up. Well, actually, it is 10:55 on my yours.